Hello, and welcome to another World of UX podcast. I'm your host, Darren Hood. Thanks for taking the time to join us on today, and a special welcome to those of you that are tuning in for the first time. We're going back to our segments where I've been providing talks that I've delivered in the past at different conferences, and good UX content has a very long shelf life. And the talk that I'm going to be sharing today is from 5 years ago at the Delta CX conference. Shout out to Debbie Levitt. And this talk is about navigating the Whirlpool. It specifically focuses on guidelines for successful recruiting and career advancement within UX. So if you want to learn about how you can navigate these very troubling waters, and people think that it got rough in the last couple of years, it's actually been getting rougher for a while. Tried to share some tips. People tend to like these tips segments more than some of the other more strict from the hip types of things, but I'm even strict for the hip when it comes to things like this. So let's go ahead and dive in. This talk again is from January of 2020. Enjoy, and we'll see you at the end.
So I can bypass my title slide. Randall took care of that for us. And I've got one moment. Now of course, after all that, we do have a snafu. So here we are. I don't have to touch on any of my introductory information here. Randall did a great job of covering that. So we're going to go ahead and just dive right into the content. So for an overview, it is my professional opinion that the world of UX has become increasingly difficult. It is a great world. It's a wonderful time to be in UX, but it is challenging, very difficult to navigate, and not just for those of us seeking jobs, but it's difficult for companies as well as for the job seekers. Companies are having trouble finding qualified candidates, while people who are seeking employment are many times, based on the wealth of people that I've spoken to, many of my friends, many of my associates, and even some things that I've encountered in my own experiences, really having trouble finding a good fit out there. So I like to refer to handling these issues. It's like trying to navigate a boat in a whirlpool, hence the title for today's session. So we're going to take a look at this topic today from 3 angles, basically. We want to take a few moments to define the whirlpool. Of course, there's a literal and then there's a figurative definition that we can apply to what we're looking at. I'd like to take some time to illustrate the dilemma at hand, and then I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about how to navigate through the challenges, how to navigate the whirlpool that we're referring to. So let's start out today with that base thought. What in the world is a whirlpool? We want to level set at this point and make sure that we're all speaking the same language, that we're all thinking the same thing here. So think of a whirlpool literally as opposing currents that often cause a downward spiraling action. The visual here should help everybody to be on the same page. Maybe you've seen this. Some people would think of it as a vortex, but whirlpool is either or really work. There's not an issue with them, but just from a definition perspective, the visual will help us out, and this first definition does a job. Here's a second definition, just to bring a little bit more clarity, just to approach it from a different angle. It's water moving rapidly in a circle so as to produce a depression in the center, and many objects that are floating are drawn into the center of that circle, if you will. So that's what we would consider to be literal translations, base definitions of what a whirlpool is. But let's up the ante just a little bit. How's that for dramatic? Before the end. And let's look at some more figurative, more metaphorical definitions of what a whirlpool is. Of course, that's where we're going to be operating today. Think of a whirlpool as a confused tumult and bustle. Think of a whirlpool as something that's confusing or tumultuous. There's that word again. and it's easy to be drawn into or difficult to get out of. And lastly, a situation in which a lot of unpleasant or complicated things are happening and from which it is very difficult to escape. And these figurative definitions really help us to clarify what it is that we're going to look at today. So I think right here, I can't see any chats or anything, but I'm going to say at this point that everybody is on the same page and we have achieved level set of the figure of speech we're using here with the Whirlpool. So let's move forward. Let then a few moments as we start to get into the dilemma. Let's spend a few moments just going through a brief UX history lesson. I share this in a lot of my talks, so some people are already familiar with this, but for those that are not, well, again, we'll level set again here. Back in the mid-90s, people are going to recognize the photo here of Don Norman. Don Norman was the first person said to be referred to as a UX architect, the first person to have the phrase or the acronym UX in his job title when he was working for Apple. And his focus at that time was to try to make this new set of products that Apple was about to roll out easy to use. Again, mid-90s. Shortly thereafter, and especially right about the time of the dot-com bust around 2000 or so, you see UX starting to pick up the paces and starting to become a more normal function, discipline, if you will, that's at work in the creative environments. And this is becoming more and more popular. And if you look on the bottom there where we see the Ditstops logo, you see the MRM McCann logo, different creative agency logos that are there, that's when those different organizations start to really serve as the main source of where you were getting a lot of your UX engagement. And that's where the vast majority of the UX positions were available in those environments. Shortly after that, and that's roughly 2000 to 2003 or so, if not just before, shortly after that, you have reports that are published from places like, ironically, from corporate sources. NASA and IBM both produce report talking about the ROI, the return on investment associated with UX engagement, being design-led, the impact of being design-led. And that report got out, and now go back up to the top, to the maroon or red area where you see the Bosch, United Healthcare, IBM, the GE logos. Once those reports started going mainstream, we start to see a shift in the world of UX. And this is when the dilemma, this is where the Whirlpool gets its beginning, because the creative agencies, which is where most of the positions were initially, understood what UX was, understood the value of UX, understood what having UX on board bring to your organization, and in those cases of serving clients. It was not a debatable issue what UX was and the ROI there. It was clear. These people saw it firsthand. The creative or the corporations, however, heard about the ROI, got involved, but never did really become educated about what UX brought to the table. So hence, you start to see an uptick as we start to go to the bottom of the screen again, the tealish area, and you see a picture that's representing people that are lined up for interviews. We see all of these positions opening up. You see this massive surge in the market of available UX positions. However, they were being done in somewhat of a dysfunctional way, because they're bringing people in, but they don't know what the people are bringing to the table. They did not know really how they interact. And then you go back up to the top of the screen, the dark gray area, where you see all this recruiting that's going on. And again, massive surge in availability of UX positions. But however, because of a lack of understanding and because of a lack of UX people to run those those operations in many of these organizations, I refer to it as the wild, wild west, but for the purpose of today, we'll just call it a whirlpool. So that's, again, a brief history lesson with regard to UX as it pertains to the whirlpool. And that's where we are today. Positions everywhere, but a lack of understanding on average with regard to what UX is, what a UX professional should have in their job description, what their responsibility should be, what value UX is bringing to the table. It's a crapshoot for a lot of people today, whether it's organizations and even individuals. So we've got an issue. We're trying to navigate the whirlpool. Here's another artifact that I like to share a lot, and I've been working on this for the last going on 4 years now. I want to make sure that, again, level setting before we get into the weeds on this topic. I want to make sure that people who are on this call understand what UX is, that people who watch this video later on YouTube, that we all understand what UX is. I'm just going to present my take on it. And I like to share this, and I refer to it as the landscape of UX. And so this landscape of UX, which contains what I like to refer to as the 4 pillars, give us a better idea of what UX is. You've got information architecture, which many of the initial UX professionals were information architects, either information architects or interaction designers. And so you've got information architecture and you've got subsets. Here you've got deliverables, you've got artifacts, you've got related activities. Same goes for heuristics and usability. You've got the research end of things, as well as the interface and interaction design. These 4 pillars, practically everything, and yes, there is overlap, but practically everything associated with UX as a whole is related to one or more of these 4 pillars. This is what and who we are, but because of the whirlpool, a lot of people really don't understand a lot of this, and we're going to illustrate that in a moment. But I want to make sure, again, level setting, that we're going to enter into a review of 3 job descriptions, 3 of them. And I want everybody to think about these 4 pillars. This is what UX is. This is the way that UX should be represented, whether it is a job seeker or an organization. But you're going to get probably a few laughs out of about what you're going to see. Let's dive in and take a look at the dilemma at hand, sort of folding out a little bit. In our first job posting, and I want these to be generic. I'm not telling anyone where I got these from, but these are, you're about to see 3 job descriptions, 3 job postings, excerpt, of course, because it's going to be longer than this in reality. And you may even search and you may even see this job and see where I got it from, but that won't be an issue. Let's just consider what these job postings are saying, the message that they're sending, and think about the whirlpool. If an organization knows more about UX, the job posting is going to reflect that. If the organization does not know a lot about UX, the job posting is going to reflect that. Let's dive in. Let's take a quick look at that. So first, we see, and I'm just going to jump around a little bit, they want this person to be able to conduct research and deconstruct users' digital interactions and habits. Now, somebody might say, well, this isn't bad. And I say, okay, in general, maybe it is okay. However, as a person who is skilled at several types of research, the first question that jumped out at me when I looked at this is that research is too generic. Do you want a person to engage in ethnography? Do you want a person to engage in data analysis and synthesis? Do you want a person to just run focus groups? Do you want a person to engage and conduct remote usability testing? What types of research do you want the person to conduct? Well, it doesn't provide any clarity. Next, that's my take on it. Next, they want you to come up with UI and UX strategies based on target goals. Again, a bit too generic and a bit too high level. And me, I tend to red flag, I should say, about to say something else. I tend to red flag postings, job postings that state UI UX. UI UX is not a thing. And there was a very popular, prominent UX person recently who made a statement saying that there is such a thing as a UI UX designer, and anybody who follows me on LinkedIn saw a response I had to that. If a job says UI UX and the person is not engaging in actual elements of the 4 pillars, then we can't say they're UI UX. Maybe they're just a UI designer, maybe they're a developer, but UI UX are not interchangeable. UI is a subset of UX, and UX encompasses the pillars. It means that a person is engaging in a multidisciplinary aspect, trying to vet out the best experience for users and gain wins for the business and users alike. So make sure that we think about it from that way. So again, too generic, a little bit too close to the stereotypical mindsets with regard to UX to group the two together. So that's strike 2 in my mind. Creating and maintaining digital assets such as interface design files, wireframes, and interactive mockups using Sketch and InVision. I wouldn't think of those as assets, so I'll give them a slight mulligan on this, but I don't think it's worded properly. And by the way, I'm going to pause for a moment just to illustrate something. What I'm doing right now is something I encourage all job seekers to do. On one hand, from organizations, you want to illustrate what it is you're trying to find as far as a human resource is concerned in an accurate, a thorough, and a transparent and a respectful manner. As a job seeker, you want to be in the business of looking line by line at a job posting so that you can understand what it is you're potentially about to get into if you post to this position. And when you see red flags, then you don't even want to apply for the position, quite frankly. So I just wanted to stop for a moment and say that. Bullet item number 4, design, build, and maintain highly reusable JavaScript, HTML, and CSS code. Now, I purposely did not include the job title, but this job title is for a UX designer. If you are designing, building, and maintaining highly reusable JavaScript, HTML, and CSS code, this person is a developer, or this company is trying to hire a unicorn. So I'm going to stop right there, and we are just going to go ahead and grade this particular one, and I give them the red circle of shame. This is a job posting that from an organizational perspective, it's a fail, and you would hope that they could do better, and you would hope that they would understand more about UX before even writing the job descriptions. From a job seeker perspective, write this one off. Let's move on to the next one. And you may have already seen some red flags. Doesn't take much. First bullet item, you must be able to comply with company attendance standards as described in established guidelines. Excuse me. Has absolutely nothing to do with UX. That is a huge swing and a miss on that one. The next one is simply talking about design tools. So we'll just give them that one. Well, that's a why. Next, they want you to have experience working with development and understanding of HTML and CSS. This is preferred, but it is bullet item number 3. If it's preferred and it's not that big of a deal, it should have been further down the list. Just saying. Next, experience with Jira, Microsoft Project, and or Trello. This has absolutely nothing to do, again, with UX. It has to do with people who are working on agile teams or just working with Jira and Project and Trello in general, but it has nothing to do with the 4 pillars or anything with regard to any deliverables, any methods or methodologies, nothing of the sort. We've got a growing issue here. And lastly, the last one I'm going to touch on, communicates effectively by listening intently. And by this time, I'm done. I've actually exercised too much patience going this far already. The red circle of shame. Once again, these guys, no, this is bypass this job posting unless you're just out on LinkedIn or Glassdoor or Indeed or Dice looking for some pre-entertainment. So let's move on. Job posting number 3. They have a nice little intro here, and yes, they do have UX, UI, and a lot of companies do because they're still maturing, and nobody is there necessarily to tell them that you shouldn't do that. I'll give them a mulligan for that. We won't worry about it. Let's get into the bullet. So identifying user behaviors through contextual research. Look at the specifics. Interviews, focus groups. I don't know why they said and facilitation there. I'm not going to worry about that so much. I love the fact that they actually got specific about the type of research that's going on and are illustrating that they're interested in identifying user behaviors through research efforts instead of leaning on genius design. So this is a huge thumbs up, that bullet point. Collecting and analyzing large data set for patterns. Without saying it, they're letting you know that they are buying into, at least at this stage, you find out more when you go to the interview, they're buying into data analysis and data synthesis, finding out what the data is saying and then determining what should be done because of the data. So huge thumbs up. Creating and executing usability tests, thumbs up. Establishing the structure of a website or application by designing content layouts and navigation. And we can stop at this one. Low fidelity and high fidelity prototypes. The mere fact that they know the difference between the two, it is a thumbs up that garners going on to potentially engage with future discussions with this opportunity. So job posting number 3, this is done. It's well enough by the organization. And it is something that we can go ahead and sink our teeth into and move forward. So these just illustrate what we can do with regard to taking a close look at companies and knowing what we should and should not do as far as investing time going forward. So here are 5 tips for companies. Now let's talk about how to navigate. What do? We talked about the Whirlpool. We defined the Whirlpool. We illustrated some of the issues that are coming up just from a job seeking perspective and the portrayal of the job perspective. But let's take a look at what a company can do to avoid some of the problems we just highlighted. And then we'll move on and talk about the job seekers in a moment. Tip number 1, solidify your organization's knowledge and awareness, of UX and how the company values UX. And you must be sincere. Do not lend lip service to this, or it will easily be identified, and then you're going to suffer millions of losses and attrition as a result, not to mention the brand goodwill, the detrimental impact on your brand goodwill. So make sure you solidify that knowledge and skill base in the way that the company values it. No lip service. Tip number 2, be committed to identifying your UX maturity level. For those of you that don't know, and you can go to SlideShare, you can do a search for Darren Hood UX maturity level. And I've done delivered talks on maturity levels in the past. Go and look that up, the talk, and that'll give you a reference point. So if you don't know anything about UX maturity levels, so that you can really understand this is indeed a thing, and it will impact your company's bottom line, and it will impact the company's morale and several key issues. If you pay attention to UX maturity level and take the time to identify it, and tapping in the tip 3 here, make sure you assign someone or even a group to manage the organization's UX maturity level. This is something that I was solely responsible for when I was a manager at Bosch. I made search in the automotive aftermarket. That's the group that I worked with. And I was responsible for managing the organization level, identifying what it was, and then managing it to implement strategies that help drive the maturity level from one level to another. And there's several strategies that you can implement to achieve that. But again, this is something you need to put on your radar and make sure you're committed to doing. Tip number 4, install skilled, knowledgeable, and committed people to head up your UX operations. Don't just bring somebody in because they're ambitious. Don't retrofit somebody because they used to be an architect. Maybe they can head this up, but they used to be, they used to have this other job and it's a little related to this. Don't retrofit somebody into that position. We need to take it seriously, and that the seriousness, the gravity that you demonstrate and how you fill that role is going to have the tremendous long-term effect. So please embrace that. Don't just bring somebody in because they're ambitious. Make sure they're emotionally intelligent. Make sure they know what UX is, and they do not have to be a former practitioner. The best boss I had in my career was a person who was not a UX practitioner. They simply understood what UX was, and they trusted me enough to let me just cut me loose and go and let me do my thing. And we achieved, this also happened at I'm going to say it's a nameless company. I'm not going to name the company this time around, but they said we had the best run UX division in the organization. That was because that was greatly attributed to my leader, he trusted me to do what he hired me to do. So that's something that's huge. And sad to say, a lot of companies don't do that today. And that is a problem. If you're serious about UX, you have to be able to do that. Tip number 5, make sure you only hire genuine UX practitioners. Don't be satisfied with imposters. And again, those of you that follow me on LinkedIn know that I will use words like retrofits, posers, and upstarts. And there are 3 different categories. I'll address that at another time. But you want real UX practitioners. They don't necessarily have to be people that are extremely seasoned. You do need to have, depending upon the size of your team, 1, 2, or 3 extremely seasoned people to balance your team out. But if it's someone who just has a passion, someone who is dedicated, someone who is serious, someone who loves UX and what UX is about, you can groom that person. And that's another reason that you need to have the senior people around. You can't just have a team with those people on it and that's it. But make sure that you have genuine practitioners. And I have an assessment resource link here. I highly recommend go out to Human Factors International. They do have a hiring assessment that you can give. Yes, there is a dollar figure associated with it, but it's a whole lot less than what happens if you hire the wrong person and they leave, or you have to get rid of them. So it's factored into the cost. Go out to humanfactors.com/certification/hiring.asp and check out that resource. I think you will be happy that you did. 5 tip for job seekers. Observe the hiring trends. Tip number 1, in your local or target community, look and see who's hiring. Look and see how often they're hiring. If somebody is always hiring for a position, you might want to steer clear of that. I know there are exceptions, but generally speaking, if someone's not just growing their department and they're hiring for the same position all the time, there is a potential issue there. And one tip that's not here, make sure to align yourself. Go to the local meetups. Make sure that you connect with people. Find somebody, if there's a company that you're interested in working for, connect with somebody who works there and talk to them off the record and get insights. And you should be able to find out whether or not that position is legitimate or not. But identify those hiring trends and they will clue you in as to whether or not that thing that seemed to be an opportunity, whether it is genuine or whether it's not. And it's something I refer to as the opportunity paradox. It looks like an opportunity, but until you vet it out, you really don't know. Somebody's just hiring. So beware of that. Tip number 2, always review job postings carefully, like what we just demonstrated. In conjunction with that, tip number 3, attempt to align yourself with that opportunity and be realistic about it. I have a history of going through and taking the job postings, taking every line item, creating a table. And through that table, you can actually, in the column adjacent to the one where you have the requirement or the responsibility, list out your note regarding how you align with that particular part of the job posting. And then gauge, is this something can I see myself doing it? Is this something that I would enjoy? Are there what the extrinsic benefits are? They have to give you a check. They're going to give you certain benefit. What about the intrinsic benefits? How much joy will you get? How much will you be respected? How well do you think you would fit there as a team member? So make sure that you evaluate yourself accordingly and do it line item by line item. It's worth your time, something that's really fun and it's beneficial to do. Tip number 4, don't refrain from asking challenging questions. And I won't talk about that anymore because I've got some example questions to run by you here shortly. And same with tip number 5, you want to make sure no matter who you are or where you are in your career, make it a point to expand your circle of competence and avoid pseudo educational resources while you're trying to expand. There are tons of pseudo educational resources out there. You can learn how to do UX in 6 months. As somebody who designed their first website in 1996, I reconfirmed that last night because I wanted to make sure I was accurate. And all the learning that I did and all the things that I have seen and all the people I have talked to and all the people I have firsthand been on the front lines and educating people, you will not learn UX in 6 months. You can lay a foundation for engaging with UX in 6 months, but you are not going to learn everything there is to learn about UX in 6 months. And when you get involved in UX, it is a commitment to continued education. We always continue learning. So just make sure that you put that on your radar if you have not done so already. So example questions, and I'll roll through these quickly. Make sure you request coverage of the team's timeline. In other words, how long has the team been in existence and how well they've been received in that organization. That will give you a better idea. So what you're about to get into, if you join that team, if they're new, then that will give you an idea as to where they probably fall on the UX maturity level. You know what kind of pushback is going to be there. You know what the dynamics will be. If they've been around 5-10 years and the team is more structured and more settled and more established, then now you have a better idea of that. So you always want to find that out. I very seldom have seen people ask that at interviews, and actually just started asking that myself in the last 3 or 4 years. So it's something I highly recommend that you do. Find out what happens to the person that you might be backfilling for. You always want to ask that question and get insights with regard to that person, and that may result in that conversation going a little bit deeper into the rabbit hole, but the information you find out could be very helpful. Seek to understand the current software development lifecycle. How is development achieved? And that, again, that I have to back up for a moment. That only applies to your developing software or digital solutions. There are instances where people are doing something a little bit different where SDLC doesn't necessarily apply, but there's still a process. So if there's an SDLC, then that's what you want to find out about. If it's just a workflow, which is why I have SDLC as /workflow, if it's just a workflow, whichever it is, make sure that you seek to understand how the team operates so that you can picture yourself in that and see how well you would fit in it and begin to sort of simulate in your mind how you would engage in that environment and ask for examples. Present design problems to understand how this team would handle it, especially things that you may have seen in the past that you weren't really happy about. Present a design problem so you can see what their take would be and then evaluate accordingly. And remember, they're not just interviewing you, you're interviewing them. So make sure that you ask a question like that so you can accurately assess what's going on as best as you can anyway. Conferring which UX skill sets are the most important to the organization. Remember the big 4 pillars that I showed you, the landscape of UX and all the different disciplines, all the different deliverables. Every organization doesn't use that entire grid, if you will. If I can refer to it as a grid. So you want to find out, if they're going to do research, what types of research are fitting. If they're going to be engaging in information architecture, then you want to understand that. You want to know that. You want to see what you can and can't do. If they're going to allow for research, what types of research are more fitting across the entire UX research spectrum? That may not be something that is applicable. You may only need to be engaged in 3 or 4 different ways. So find out what skill sets are applicable and see if you're a match. Sort of redundant here, but present a UX problem that frustrated you in the past. What may not be related to a project. It could just be a general problem, but present a UX problem without making a past employer look bad, which is something that's very taboo. We're not supposed to do that, so we want to refrain from that. But present a problem that frustrated you in the past and ask how this team would respond. Number 7, inquire about the team dynamics, and you do it by presenting a scenario. So present the scenario. If this is going on, you have someone who's pushing back with regard to research. How would your team handle that? How would that work in this environment? That's an example. If interested, check to see if remote work is doable or if it's possible. That's only if you're interested. A lot of times companies will tell you that it's not a thing in their environment, and if that's the case, then you know. But if it's something that's important and it hasn't come up, by all means, you want to ask about that. If you feel it's safe to, I should say. Number 9, identify the current team's skill, knowledge, and experience level. I already mentioned you want to find out how old the team is. Find out how experienced the current teams are, individual by individual. How long have you been in UX? What brought you into UX? Ask those questions. Again, you're interviewing them as well. And the last question, ask about the organization's stance on personal and professional growth. Find out what they will do and how committed they are to helping you be a better UX professional. And you can flip all of these questions if you're the organization. Make sure that you're ready to answer these questions, or make sure that these are things that you're considering as well. That will take you up a few notches as far as your excellence in positioning yourself as an employer. From the circle of competence perspective, this is something that Warren Buffett came up with, and this is the model that I choose to embrace. The one that is most frequently seen only has 2 circles, but I like the 3-circle approach. Number 1, the actual circle of competence is that first circle where it says what you know. What do you truly and actually know? That's where we strive to operate. That is your circle of competence. Unfortunately, there are 2 other circles, and sometimes it's not necessarily an unfortunate thing, it's just a fact. What do you think you know? Unfortunately, a lot of people try to operate there, but you aren't really authorized, you're not skilled, you're not knowledgeable, you can't really function there. So you don't want to operate there. And then beyond that, the things that you definitely don't know, obtainable though, and what you think you know is actually in that circle as well. So those are 2 areas that as you continue to expand your actual circle of competence, it gets bigger and bigger and the other areas get smaller and smaller. So as you continue to press on in that way, you become a more marketable talent. You become more fitting for more roles. You're better suited and you're more of a value add to any organization. So you want to expand your circle of competence. In conclusion, let's tap into the circle of competence a little bit. Make sure that you're realistic. I come across a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people, whether it's an organization or an individual who's looking for a job. People are looking for a unicorn. Companies are looking for unicorns. That's not realistic. Companies are looking for someone to create visual designs as well as put together wireframes and conduct research. You can have 2 people to do those 2 jobs. Be realistic. If you're looking for something, if you specialize in information architecture, but you haven't done research, you're going to need to build your skill and knowledge with regard to research before you go in that direction. If you are an interface or interaction designer, and that's where you specialize, then you want to make sure you're looking for something that focuses on that skill set or enhance and enlarge your circle of competence with regard to other areas, then pursue those positions. So be realistic. No matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, UX is an uphill climb, and it will probably remain an uphill climb for at least a decade or so. So embrace the uphill climb. If you're an organization, you're having such trouble trying to fill your roles. I look at so many resumes. I personally have gone through so many resumes in past positions. It is an uphill climb, but it's something that needs to be done. Just embrace it. Embrace it and commit to excelling at it. If you're an organization, again, make sure you manage your UX maturity level. And in so doing, it should help you to optimize your recruiting process. If you're trying to bring someone in at a certain maturity level, it will help you to be more transparent during the recruiting process. It will help you to bring in and identify the right person based on where you are in your own UX maturity. It optimizes everything. It helps you to be more efficient in what you're doing. If you're a job seeker, always vet out the opportunities. Don't just post something because it's there. A lot of companies say that they want a UX person, but the truth is, most UX job postings are a ruse. A lot of companies, they're very low on the maturity level. They don't know. Some companies are low and they know. That's a safer environment to go into. an environment that is low on the maturity level, UX maturity level, and they don't know it, could be very dangerous. And because it's impossible for them to know who to bring in if they don't know. And a lot of companies are doing exactly that today. I've experienced it a lot over the course of my career. Sad to say, I'm not happy about it. I'm not proud about it, but that's the truth. And so, and I will try to encourage as many people as possible to avoid doing what I did. If you go and look at my LinkedIn profile, you will see exactly what I'm talking about if you're not familiar with it. Lastly, for job seekers, make sure you become truly qualified. If you're truly qualified, you should be able to go into any legitimate employment opportunity and at least compete for that position. Don't worry about the other ones. You don't want to go there anyway. And as we get better, as we become more skilled at evaluating job opportunities, we will start to throw more job postings aside, and they just become a source for a chuckle, and we can all use a good chuckle, right? Folks, the world of UX is indeed a whirlpool. There is no getting around it. I started to try to put a few wireframes and things in this illustration here, just to make it a little funnier, but it's not really funny. But you guys to get my drift, I hope. It's a whirlpool. It is a tumultuous scenario with a lot of moving parts. And unfortunately, a lot of times you don't realize that something is wrong until you get into it. The hope is that we would become better at identifying things. And that's my hope in delivering this call today, this talk, I should say. I'm talking through the phone and making the call. The more we understand, the better off we'll be. The more we'll say no. The more we'll be better at picking our opportunities. The more organizations will strive to be more transparent how they represent themselves. The more that organizations will spend time managing at UX maturity level and making their organization a better destination for people like me and those of you out there that are listening today, better places to go where the intrinsic value will outweigh the extrinsic value. That's what I'm hoping for today. That's what I'm pulling for today. And I hope that I'm inspiring some people to reach out, to pursue exactly that. The world of UX is a whirlpool, folks. Let's just navigate it.
Well, we hope you enjoyed the talk on navigating the whirlpool. We hope you heard some tips, some information that will help you along your way as you navigate your career in user experience. Those of you new to the podcast, don't forget to check out KaizenTees.com. Look at our different t-shirt merchandise, hoodies, cups, notebooks, different things that help to get the word out about pure UX, focusing on the fact that UX is not UI. Just because somebody tells you what they think, that's not asking them what they think. I should say that's not UX research, just some different messaging that we get out on some of these things. But go ahead out to KaizenTees.com. That's KaizenTees.com. Check out the merch, and we look forward to seeing you in the future wearing some of that great Kaizen Tees merchandise. But that's all the time that we have for today, folks. But until next week, this is Darren Hood, the host of The World of UX, wishing everybody all the best. And until next time, happy UXing, everybody.